Hello again, and welcome back. I am McSnazzi, and today we are back in City Skylines for another episode of our Grand Haven series. But before we get into that, please consider subscribing down below. It's completely free, and it really does help out the channel. Now for this episode, we are going to be extending the industrial area of the build here today. We're going to step a little bit outside of the suburb city of Cornet that we've been working on in the previous 4 episodes, or 5 episodes, not sure at this point. Yeah, it was 4 episodes. And we're going to do a couple things here and there, but mostly it's going to be focused on the industrial area that we've sort of talked about in previous episodes. But to start this off, we are going to be making the ocean or the lake over here by where the big downtown area of the big city will be in the future of this build. I just wanted to go ahead and throw this down, and I cut a lot of that footage out because it is pretty boring of watching the terraforming and the water sort of form up, but I wanted to get that going because it just helps me set out a little bit of what I want to do in the future for that downtown area. It gives me an idea of where I should be going with this area that we're doing today, which is the industrial area. We've kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Now it's going to extend past this river, even though it's kind of sort of bordered with this river for good measure to sort of separate the industrial area from the rest of the city and the suburb of Cornet. So what I'm going to be doing first off is building the highway sort of around it. I had this highway going this way initially when we first made the sort of framework for the build and for the series in the first episode. If you haven't seen that one, you can check it out in the playlist down below. But that being said, I wanted to sort of make an outside highway with an exit for this industrial area so that all the industrial area cars or like cargo traffic won't get bogged down in all the other interchanges and highway like off and on ramps. They'll have their own specific sort of highway off and on ramp right into the industrial area, and I think it's really efficient, sort of like an oversight sort of with the big city, trying to make things efficient before we even plop down the big city. And that's sort of the idea of this area, and that's why it's kind of a little far out from where the downtown area necessarily will be. It's kind of close to this suburb town, which I think is, fairly realistic if you look at, any big city metro areas in the US. Kind of similar standing there, where the industrial areas are usually separated a little bit. They can be close to suburb towns and things like that. So we're extending this big road that is the main drag of Cornet over into this industrial area, and that's gonna probably go all the way into the big city. It's probably gonna be maybe like the main road of the area because it connects like 2 towns and everything, and maybe it'll be like Grand Haven Avenue, something like that, something cool like that. But we'll get to that when we get to that point. So right here, we're going to be extending sort of the neighborhood a little bit past this highway exit, just adding a few houses over here by that coal-fired power plant we have right there, and sort of on the other side of the river of this industrial area that we're working on in this episode, and we're going to start doing a little bit of that. But the reason I showed a little bit of that neighborhood building is because I did a lot of that off camera, as you'll see in the real-time portion, because the area, as you see at the bottom there, the residential demand is like super duper high. There needs to be a lot more people and a lot more houses for all these industrial things I'm putting down, along with a lot of the shops we put down in the previous episode. So I'm just trying to add houses here and there, and I know it's pretty boring to watch placing of neighborhoods and residential areas unless they're unique and different, kind of like with the new development one we did on the last episode. So I'm going to do a lot of that off camera, at least for the suburb area. When we start moving into the downtown and the big city, those will be a little more interesting, placing down residential. But for now, I'll just sort of keep that off screen, and we'll show it in the live portion and talk about it in those at the end of the episodes when it pertains. But now we're going to throw down a few industrial buildings. Mostly it's going to be using the Industries DLC. A lot of the unique factories in that, some of the warehouses in that as well, we're going to put down. We put down a waste processing plant. That was the big building you just saw placed on screen. Thought it could be sort of the big thing for the area, big thing for the city, to sort of, process all the waste, all the trash that the big city and the small suburb towns around the area will sort of produce. So I thought it was a good place to put it. This is kind of a secluded industrial area. I think it's fairly realistic, and it's sort of efficient to do something like that, even though we'll have sort of industrial still placed here and there, in order to make it sort of have that realism where, you know, not everything is zoned in specific areas. There's not just a huge residential zoned area, there's not just a huge industrial zoned area and commercial area, just everything's separated into specific areas, which I don't think is very realistic. Things definitely get grouped together, but being a little more realistic is things are kind of formed over time, and you know, over time thoughts change, planners' ideas change, so things end up getting zoned all over the place sometimes, just how they work out historically, and that's sort of the realism aspect I'm going to go for the most part for this build. And I've already kind of done that in the previous episodes. If you haven't seen those, they're in the playlist down below, but we sort of zone a little bit of industry, a little bit of shops and offices kind of near residential areas, near police stations, stuff like that, you know, something a little more realistic where things are kind of plopped everywhere in main areas, and then you have separate neighborhood areas and you have a school and stuff like that. So that's sort of the idea I'm going to use, but now on screen, since we're sort of finished placing down most of the buildings we're going to place down for this industrial area in this episode, we're going to do the highway on and off ramp for the industrial area. Now this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, where I wanted to do something where it was just the highway for the industrial area, where really industrial traffic will go on and off this ramp, and it's sort of right smack dab into the area, so it's very convenient for and efficient for the industrial traffic to use, and probably won't get a lot of other traffic going through this area, which is the goal, because I want the other traffic, like the residential and traffic like that, maybe first responders like the police and the fire services, to use the already made exits off of the main highway that people will probably use to do everything. This is just kind of a side exit to this specific area, coming off sort of the outskirt highway that's going to border around all the main areas of the big city. Does it with the suburb too. And when we build inevitably another suburb town, because I'm sure Cornett will not be the only suburb of this big metro area, I think it's a realistic thing to do. Well, not necessarily realistic, but a more efficient thing to do, to have sort of this industrial on and off ramp for pretty much just industrial traffic, even though anyone can use it if you're in the area. You know, workers coming here and can use it as well, and I think it's a good thing to do, and I think it looks cool in the end. That's also another aspect that we do enjoy to see in these episodes. But that's the fun thing about City Skylines, is you can still go for that realism, but the thing in real life is, you know, a bunch of different cities do a bunch of different things, so you can kind of just make up your own way, and anything that you think would be cool or efficient you can place in. And for instance, this is an example of something like that, even though in the end, when we build this next sort of parallel exit here, it's gonna look a little tall. It's gonna have to go up to that second level of highway there, and it's gonna look a little weird, little janky, but I think in the end it turns out okay, you know, good enough. It does look like a bit weird, but that's all that we can do in this situation. So future plans for this highway sort of that we're looking at right now, that's going to go into the main city of downtown, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to make it go directly into the downtown or just kind of stop shy of it, and there's going to be a couple exits there for the downtown. Some of the cities that I'm using for reference for this build, you know, on Google Maps and Google Earth respectively, have a couple of highways that end directly in the downtown, sort of like that's the end of where the highway is going, and that is just the end of the highway in general. Say you start at the beginning of the highway, you're going to drive it all the way till there where it stops, and it's going to exit off into a road. Now some of them also do go into other states, and some go into other countries off of the base cities that are my sort of inspiration cities that I'm using some of these highways. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to to do with that. I have more of a sense that I'd like to sort of make it stop in the downtown, or like right before the downtown, something similar like that, where it's sort of like the end point. This is exactly where the highway is meant to go, and you're on it to get to this point in general. So here we're going to move a couple pillars down into the area to make it look a little more realistic and supported, because it is looking kind of very intricate and going right over the highway with this bridge. So it does need to be supported. It can't just be hanging there, because that wouldn't make sense at all. Here we're going to make the exit here. I just wanted to sort of take all of the stuff out of this area, and we're going to put the exit right here so that all the traffic can sort of permeate right here and get on and off in this sort of like road that's specifically made for that. And I didn't want to put too much industry by here. We might go back and put some things nearby, because this area is not finished yet, as you'll see in the real-time walkthrough in just a moment. We don't exactly finish the area in total, but over here we're going to put a waste transfer facility. I didn't realize I needed this in order for the waste processing plant right next to it to work, so I sort of made a little complex area over here where we have them kind of right next to each other. It looks like just like a waste processing complex in general. So that's sort of what we do there. So for the rest of the time lapse, there's just going to be a few touch-up things here and there. We're going to place some trees so it looks a little more natural and a little more finished. And then we're going to place maybe one more building or two, but I do a lot of work off camera in this episode, as you'll see in just a moment when we do the real-time walkthrough, but I'll show it all in just a second. And I will see you guys in the time lapse in a moment. If you want to skip ahead to it, it is time-stamped below, and you can see it with the markings on the sort of play bar down below as well. So I will see you guys in a moment for that. Alright everybody, welcome back to the real-time walkthrough of the episode. As you can see, we've done quite a bit of work here. In the time lapse we did sort of this area. Off camera I've done a little bit as well. Basically everything on the other side of this highway is brand new in this episode, apart from this coal power plant that is right there. We'll get to some of the stuff that I did off camera in a second, but let's talk about the industrial area, which is sort of the main part of this episode for those who missed the time lapse. So what I wanted to do was sort of create an industrial area that's sort of separated from the rest of the residential areas and the downtown that we are going to be building in this area in the future. Sort of the downtown will lay around this coast here as the water sort of fills in up there. And I kind of want this industrial area to sort of go out here as well, but be separated a little bit from the residential shops, offices, and sort of sports arenas and parks that we're going to have over in the downtown area. So what I wanted to do was sort of make them have their own separated area, and this river was the perfect spot to put it. So I just sort of made it on the other side of the river. We added and made the highway go a little longer around here. We made this main road follow along, and we sort of made this industrial traffic on and off ramp for the highway. So this is one of the biggest things of the episode, apart from actually placing real industrial buildings. I wanted industrial traffic to have its own sort of on and off ramp, so it doesn't get messed up with all the other traffic that'll be using sort of the other interchanges that we have around the city. I didn't want them to all get clogged up with industrial traffic. I wanted them to sort of have an area where they can go on and off into the pseudo-industrial area, and that's pretty much all the traffic for the workers and sort of the goods going back and forth on the trucks, stuff like that. We added in all these buildings here, mostly these unique sort of factories. We haven't really added in the industry to support these unique factories. But these are all from the Industries DLC. We have a furniture factory here, and we have a plastics factory as well. So we're going to need to make sort of industry areas that make like the oil and the raw timber for stuff like that. But for now, we just have sort of the unique buildings. We have some generic industrial buildings here, sort of made into a little complex as well. A water treatment facility. a couple warehouses over here. This is sort of a bus building I threw down as well, so we can have some public transport here soon. Bus depot seemed like the kind of thing to sort of put over here by the bridge, so we went for it. And then a waste processing facility sort of complex here with a couple trash related buildings, so we have that here. Now off camera that you didn't see is me placing this cargo train terminal. I thought we needed sort of a train line that goes into this industrial area that can sort of get goods in and out of this area, so I've sort of added it, and it works perfectly with sort of the highway and the road here, as all these will sort of go parallel towards the downtown together. And sort of the train line will go out here, maybe meet up with this train line, or just go outside of the map to the other cities that we are going to make sort of the suburb towns as well. Off camera we did sort of this area and sort of this portion out between both highways and the river. We added some more houses over here, and I did it off camera, of course, because we've been doing a lot of this in the previous episodes. I didn't want to show sort of the same thing over and over again, as we have added a lot of neighborhoods. But as you can see right here, we need a lot of residential. There's a big need for residential in this area with all the shops and all the industry areas that we have made. So that's sort of the idea of me doing houses off camera, so you don't have to constantly watch me make neighborhoods as well. I added these shops up here. We have sort of a couple more gas stations by the highway, a little eatery there, and some a little bit of a strip mall here as well. I added this neighborhood, sort of keeping it a little different from everything that we've done so far, that not all the residential areas look the same, as they never really do when you're looking at it in real life. And I added some of these townhomes. I think they look good here, sort of like this maybe was a previous main drag of this area, and there's just some of these older townhomes along this way. This area, I'm not sure if I'm going to do all of it off camera. I may add this into the next episode a little bit, but I may do quite a bit of this off camera, as it is going to be mostly residential as we sort of flesh out this area, add a lot more people because there needs to be a lot of people. But in the next episode I may head this way. We may do some downtown layout. I think it might be time to start doing some of those things, sort of thinking about the grander scheme of this build, and maybe adding some high density residential areas to add some more people as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this area. I'm really happy with the results. I think it looks great, and it's sort of some good framework as we sort of extend this build further and further. We got these good building blocks of the suburb town, sort of this industry area, in order to make a really cool, realistic build that's also, you know, something unique in itself as well. So I appreciate everyone who watched. I hope you did enjoy the episode. If you did, please leave a like down below. If you want to keep up with the series, please subscribe down below as well. It's completely free, and it really does help out the channel. Leave a comment if you have something to say or have a question of any sort. You can check out all the recent episodes of this series in the playlist down below, as well as the mods and assets that we use throughout the series in the mods and asset collection that is also linked down in the description. Check out my Twitter to keep up to date with all these builds, my Planet Zoo content, and just some screenshots of these builds, Planet Zoo content, and stuff like that. Thank you all for watching again. I do appreciate it. And until next time, I am McSnazzi, and I'll see you guys in the next one.